Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera. Here we are with episode 117 of Behind the Camera. As always, before we get into today's show, if you would like to follow Behind the Camera across social media, you can find my link tree in the description, which will take you to Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and also has the link to where you can buy my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. This is available in both paperback and ebook, and is free to read if you have Kindle Unlimited. If you also would like to see more of the behind-the-scenes side of the podcast, you can also support the show on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to extra content, including a Patreon exclusive series, your name added to the wall of patrons at the end of every episode of Behind the Camera, and much more. But now, getting into today's conversation. Today's episode focuses on the power of podcasting. After 2 years of Behind the Camera and what podcasting has done for me personally, I'm very much an advocate of people using their voice and using that to connect with and inspire others. And joining me today to talk about this is talk show host and podcast producer Richard Wilmore. Having spent many years both in front of and behind the camera, Richard shares his wisdom as a producer, helping people and businesses who want to get into podcasting, what podcasting can mean for an individual in their personal life, and also useful tips in how to break into particular demographics with your show. So now, here's the interview. Richard, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are we doing?
I have no complaints. How are you?
Excellent. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thank you very much for your time as well. So you're a talk show host.
Well, like any 12-year-old kid, I wanted to be a talk show host. And I wanted to be a teacher up until I was 12 years old. And then from that moment, when I was 12, that's all I've wanted to do and have tried to do and have thankfully been able to do now into my 40s. This entire time, one way or another, it's been a ride. I can tell you that.
Oh, for sure. And for those who are watching on video, your setup is like that of a talk show host as well, and I absolutely love that. It's incredible. So so you find it make your day richer. So tell us about that, like as a company, and what you guys do, especially in terms of podcasting.
Yeah, so what I do is podcast production. I have a studio here that people come in and I film their podcasts for them and do the editing and distribution and all that fun stuff. So every wall in this studio has a different person's set on it. So it's pretty cool. It's very bright in here, and it's a lot of fun. And then I also help people find podcasts to go on. So kind of a PR agent, and I work with people to find the right podcasts for them to go and brag about themselves. And I filmed my first podcast, I guess, talk show in about 15 years ago, and literally had an iPad full of footage, and never until that moment thought, oh, what do I do with this? Like, my goal was just, I want to talk to people. I want to create a platform. I want to have a space, but not like, how do you get it from here to there? And how does all of that work? Like, I did it without microphones, without lights. Like, I literally had never thought about it. And so I just taught myself how to edit this first interview and how to get it on YouTube and what that looked like and what it meant and where else to put it. And as I was doing that, I had other friends who had businesses who were like, well, can you help me make fun videos for my business? And like, can you help? And so it just has snowballed over the last 15 years into now doing what I do now. But it really started as just, I want to do this for myself, and kind of attracted other people of like, well, he looks like he's having fun. How do I get in on that?
Yeah, and that's a great way to start as well. Like I think like a lot of shows and podcasts do start from just purely, this is what I want to do. And then like the rest kind of follows, like in terms of the production side of things and the how to and everything. Like it's really just a case of, using your voice first, and then everything else kind of comes secondary. So then what was that like for you personally in terms of finding your voice, especially over the last like 10 to 15 years of hosting a talk show?
I think I grew up as a kid who didn't want to be seen. I wanted to blend in. I had enough negative attention on me that I was like, I don't need, like I just tried to blend in. I didn't want anybody to know my name or know who I was. And now I'm in this position where I do. And so that's been a lot of work with my therapist over switching that into like, no, it's okay to be celebrated, to be seen, to be heard.
Yeah.
And to brag about yourself, to brag about your accomplishments and be proud of what you've done. So that has been a work in progress, I'll say.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And like I do find that about like podcasting and just I think more talking to people, but I think the podcast element definitely does help. But
Mhm.
there's like an element of it where it can really bring out the extrovert in an introvert.
Yes.
Like I had that personally with me. Like, I mean, 2 years ago, I would not have like, or I suppose maybe 3 years ago, we'll go a bit further back actually, but I would never have wanted to put myself out there for fear of not even rejection, but fear of just what people might think. And
Mhm.
then I got into live streaming, then podcasting, and I was just like, you know, with all the stories that I'm hearing, all these people that I'm meeting, see what like other people think. That does not matter one
Yeah.
iota because of what there is to be gained on such a personal level
Yeah.
from what you get from meeting people, what it does to your personal confidence, like finding your voice and talking. Like it's honestly something that just it can't be taught. Like you just have to go and do it, and then you just sort of I don't know, man. It was like for me, it was like something else anyway.
Yeah, and it takes practice, like even here now as we're recording this, like no one's here. It's just the
Yeah,
two of us. We have no idea if people are going to hate this, love this, share it, like there's that weird like I can do this, but there's still a next step, when you're recording stuff. Like you still have to put it out there and then either people are going to comment or they're not, and then what does that feel like when you don't get comments, and what is it like there's so much unknown when you're doing stuff like this that I think it paralyzes people sometimes.
absolutely. Yeah, like I completely agree. Like I used to do this online. Like I used to do this live. I used to do my
Mhm.
podcast live on Twitch, and for me, I kind of feel like that was the sort of fight or flight kind of thing because for me it was like this is live, there are no edits, there's no takes. Well, there can be, but there's a lot of risk involved in that.
Yeah.
And I if anybody listening or watching has ever seen a Twitch chat before, they can be quite unforgiving at times, but I like to think they mean well. But when I started, I was just all live and one take, and it was no production whatsoever because
Mhm.
I mean it was wanted to be different, but you learn. And do you do your talk show live as well, or is it a sort of similar format in terms of?
So I at one point was doing a 5 day a week live
Mhm.
talk show that I would have like 3 or 4 guests per episode, and it just became, and I only did that because I didn't want to listen to myself. Like I got tired of editing and listening, and so I was like, well, I don't. I'm like the goal was always a live show. Why don't I just do that?
Yeah,
And I feel like people show up a little bit taller, and there is that like fight or flight moment that everyone. I love doing it live because it's just like it feels like everyone's on another level, hosts and guests. But I made it too complicated for myself, too many buttons and things happening and commercials, and I found myself not paying enough attention to the guest because I didn't want to screw up, so I was making sure that my finger was on the right button so I
yeah.
didn't do anything. And then I thought, oh well, this is not the point of what I wanted to do. So then I started recording stuff.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I feel like there's a sort of when you're doing something like that, especially like if you started independent and everything like that, there needs to be that kind of like when you're in the moment, when you're recording your show, there needs to be that kind of separation between the host and the producer, even though they're
Mhm.
the same people, but it's impossible. it is
Yeah.
impossible, but you have to kind of, there is an element you have to do, or if something, like say god forbid something goes wrong in this conversation, I'd have to silently kind of wiggle my mouse, do something, and hopefully nobody hears the clicks and everything. But yeah, like it's hard to kind of find that sort of separation. So how do you sort of find the differences between doing a live show and then doing recordings like offline where it is just you and your guests?
What I did love about doing it live was being able to kind of live in the moment. And I think it gave some sort of authenticity and personalization to the entire thing.
Mhm.
Like I would be in interviews and my camera would go down and, or the dog barking in the background and or something would, a light would literally fall over. And it's in those moments where you just go like, okay, well, this isn't surgery. Like it's okay, And I think it also is relatable to people, other either the audience, other people who are doing the same thing. Like you have to really get comfortable with sort of looking like a fool sometimes. And it made me realize like, oh, this is why TV shows have crews of 200 people
Yeah.
because this, to get it done without, and even then there are still problems that happen.
Mhm.
Um, so I loved that. I love the spontaneity of that. But I also loved this sort of format where you're recording because in some ways some of the guests would feel more comfortable. And that's really what it's all about is making them comfortable and want to shine as much as they can. Um, so there are things I love and kind of hate about both of them.
No, for sure, for sure. Like I completely agree. Like I do love the live format. Like there's somewhat more of a comfort in the offline format, but the live format is like a lot more fun because anything can
Hmm.
happen. It's a bit more
Hmm.
unfiltered almost.
Yeah.
But speaking of guests, obviously you yourself being a long-term host and being a guest today, and obviously you've been a guest on other podcasts. How do you find the differences between being a host and being a guest? Because they are two completely different types of
Mhm.
voices that I find personally.
Yes. For me, it's a lot of control issues and trust. Like I always tell my guests, like, trust me. Like my job here is to make you look good. Like I'm
Mhm.
not here to make you look anything else but that. And so it's then putting that back in my own brain of like, well, you're not here to make me look stupid. So trust you. Follow your lead. Um, but it's kind of fun is what I'm finding is that it is fun to be on this side and to see how other people are doing it has been really interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that there's a lot to be learned as well from
Mhm.
how other people interview. And I know for like, I mean, out of 100 and nearly 20 episodes, 100, yeah, for me, every time I guessed, and I probably guessed it on maybe a tenth of the episodes I've ever hosted, if even, and it is so different. Like you get so yourself, you get so comfortable in your own format with your own voice, and even though the guests are different, you know the way you host an episode stays the same. The way you host a show,
Yeah.
it stays the same, or at least it's a very similar format. It's very comfortable. It's your voice. But when you're faced with like different hosts and you're being asked different questions, or the line of questioning is sort of worded differently and a lot of follow-ups, there there's so much that you kind of realize. It's like, wow, is this how my guests feel whenever like
Yeah.
I'm interviewing them. There's
Yeah.
it is a whole other thing. And do you feel like it's as a podcast host, do you feel like it's important to guest a lot, like obviously not as much, but like a guest a lot as well as being a host?
I always tell people who are starting to do a podcast when they come to me and they go, I want to do a podcast. Can you help me? The first thing I tell them to do is go on podcasts and talk about kind of the issues or the topics that they're going to be talking about on their podcast because it gets them to see how other hosts and how other shows are doing it. So you're going to
Mhm.
see things when you're guesting on someone else's show that you love that you want to make sure you're doing on your show, and things that annoyed you and that you want to make sure don't happen on your show. And I think it's a good way to learn what you love and what you don't love, because there's so many elements to it, and it's
Mhm.
hard to, like, I know what I like, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for some other host that I'm working with.
No, of course, and obviously, podcasting isn't. It's not a one size fits all approach. Like every
Yeah.
host is going to be different. Every show is going to be different, even if the formats are very, very similar. So when you're producing a podcast, is there an element of you just kind of you have to sort of trust like your client who comes to you and is like, I want to produce I want you to produce this podcast for me. Do you have to kind of like trust their process first, see how it is, and then if you need to kind of step in and be like, okay, well, maybe this isn't working, let's step another direction. Like, what way does it work from your side?
Yeah, I've been lucky that the people that have come to me only, like, they don't really have a plan or an idea of how it
Okay.
works. They just know, like, I have this business or I have this topic and I want to expand on that. And they're coming to me because they don't know anything about anything else. And so they're willing to try to change things, to see, like, we do a lot of test shows to see what's working for them and what's not. Interviews, no interviews, scripted questions, just off the cuff, like, and all of them are different. And I try to drive home that it can also change.
Yeah.
You can do 5 episodes that are all scripted, and then you go, it feels too robotic for me. I want to maybe try something else, and so we try something else. Um, so I've been lucky that way, that everybody has been very open to ideas and to just try and see what happens. Because I think that's where we fail, is like, we need to make sure it's the right way when we start, otherwise we won't start. And then what happens? Nothing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because I think if you kind of go in with a perfectionist kind of mentality towards
Mm-hmm.
it, you're almost setting yourself up to fail
Yeah.
because then you're not really allowing yourself any room for improvement. And you could be doing this for years and years. And I think you're always going to find something. Like, it's not quite a case as you're only as good as your last episode, but very much a sort of case where because everybody you're speaking to is going to be so different.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be learned from that. And so what kind of businesses then do you work with? Is it like just a sort of anyone who would approach you if they have like a sort of they want to get into podcasting, or would you work with a sort of specific type of business and people?
I feel like I go to school every single day
Yeah.
because I'm learning something every day. I have everything from an HR consultant to a nonprofit that houses people the last 3 months of their life and gives them a space to die with dignity. Like, that's the spectrum of people that I work with. And um, I feel really lucky that I get to do that. My rule is, like, do you have the personality and do you have something to say? Like, um those are kind of not necessarily what box you fit into, but
Yeah.
are you going to be comfortable on camera, and are you going to have enough stuff to cover lots of episodes? So we're not doing 5 episodes and you're like, well, I ran out of content, never mind.
Yeah, and unfortunately kind of falls into that sort of
Yeah.
statistic of shows not making it into double digits, and which is always a shame because it's people say there's too many podcasts out there, but I think there's sometimes there's not enough.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so let's say somebody comes to you and you can kind of tell from the first meeting that sometimes not everybody has the voice for it, but you can train yourself to have the voice for it. You can
Mm-hmm.
really work on it. Like, does that kind of cover in what you do? Would you be able to sort of get somebody, an individual, podcast ready in terms of camera confidence, their voice, their tone, and everything like that?
Like I was saying, like, we do test shows until they're comfortable, until I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with putting it out. I was working at one point with a nonprofit founder, and we worked for months, once a week, on a podcast that never went anywhere because she just couldn't get out of her head.
Mhm.
Like, no matter what and finally I was like, this isn't going to work. And I think some people, especially in that, like, founder role, that CEO role, when they're starting a podcast, they think they're the ones that have to be the host because they know the most. when sometimes they're not going to be the best host. They're also not going to have the most time to do it, the commitment, the energy to do that. And so it really is like, if you have an organization, who is the best person to be in that seat? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's the person that's at the highest rank.
No, of course not. Of course. And has there ever been any instances where your clients have asked you to host the podcast?
That's so funny. I'm literally starting that in 2 weeks. Yes.
Oh, okay. No way.
Yes. Yeah. I have done that before. Yes. Because why not? If it's a conversation, it's a company has hired me to make a podcast interviewing their members.
Mhm.
And so as long as I know ahead of time and can research, I'm good to go.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's something that I've been thinking about like a lot over the last like couple of months. Is that a lot more businesses and corporate entities especially are kind of getting into podcasting, and I think that's
Mhm.
it's somewhat of an untapped market with podcasting. And you have people who are so experienced who can really kind of help people, but then are people kind of are these companies really willing to kind of, obviously a lot
Yeah.
are when they reach out, but then you know I just think it's a very, very important thing because it's an extra form of media. It's an extra form of information that's going out into the public realm, which is exactly what they want, because not everybody is going to sit and look at a LinkedIn post or a social media post or anything
Hmm.
like that. But
Hmm.
if they stumble across a podcast of something that is very familiar, but it is different, then I think that's going to pique a little bit more of interest. And so whenever like a business comes to you, then do you sort of stick to the sort of interview style podcast for them, or is it very much a sort of per case approach in terms of how their podcast could and maybe should look?
Definitely per case. I have both that do. I have some that only stick to kind of the talking head model. I have some that do interviews only. I have some that do both. I have some that have kind of, they don't like, they've started with interview or solo episodes and are
Mhm.
like, I just want to talk to people. Like, I want to talk to people in this field. um, One of the first things I do say to someone, it like, if they're thinking about a podcast and talk, when we start talking about the time and the commitment, like, do you need a podcast or do you just need some better market? Like, should you be going as a guest on a podcast? Because there's so much content, whether you're a guest or a host, that you can get out of one episode with clips and the interview itself. Like, maybe just being a guest, showing up and letting that podcast host do all the work fits your schedule better than trying to do a big production of a podcast. So those are always conversations I like to have to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like that kind of goes both ways, I think, in terms of being a guest and being a host, because like I had somebody come up to me a while ago, and they knew I had the podcast, and it was somebody who I'd interviewed before. And he said, "Oh, I'm thinking of starting a podcast, and I might actually ask for your help if it comes to it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And he goes, "But yeah, the sole purpose of it is just for really making clips and just everything like that."
Mhm.
And I immediately just switched off. I was just like, "No." I just said to him, "Look, I'm not interested," because it sounds so bad, but for me, it was just I immediately knew the intention wasn't there.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like podcasting itself, like it's such an amazing thing, and it has like the potential to be even better than what it already is. And but you need to, like you said, you need to be in it for the right reasons. You need to kind of you need to connect with the right people, and
yeah,
like not just do it for because it's a fad, or because it'll
right.
get you that extra sort of boost in your platform or whatever. And you mentioned terms of utilizing clips and things like that. So how important is social media when you have a podcast? Because it's I from my personal experience and a lot of others I know, they're very, very they're similar but very, very different. You know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you can put all the clips in the world up on social media. Of the smallest percentage might translate over
Yeah.
into the long form on like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. So where's the sort of, how do you kind of make your clip stand out? How do you kind of drive that traffic over to where you want it to be?
I think the point of that is kind of a couple different things
Mhm.
to me. Like one, if you have a podcast and you put it out on Spotify and then you don't tell your friends, your family, your audience that you have a podcast, and then you come back to me and go, "How come my podcast only has 10 listens?" And I go, "Well, did you tell anybody about it?" And they go, "Well, no." I'm like, "Well, like we're all not sitting around wondering what Richard Wilmore is doing today. Like, we don't really care." But if I put it out there that I'm on this podcast, there are going to be some people that watch it and listen, and and that's, I think, how you use it. I think it's also helpful to kind of see topics that maybe are resonating with people more. I was doing a sit down desk chair podcast, a talk show podcast, and then I started playing games with all of my guests at the end, and I noticed that those clips always got the most views when I was playing a
Mhm.
game with someone. And I was like, well, maybe I should start a game show. And so then I started a game show. Like it evolved into a game show that was a ton of fun. Um, so I think there's that part of it of like you have to let people know that you even have something,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't put if you were having a sale at your store, you would put signs up and you would tell people there's a sale. You wouldn't just wait for people to magically grab the item that's on sale. And then the other thing I would do when I was doing my daily show, because it was a variety show and I had lots of different topics, when I would go in and find specific like Facebook groups that revolved around that topic to share that interview in that group. If it was a children's book author, I would go into children's book recommendation Facebook pages
Yeah.
or like different, stuff like that to kind of go into that audience, like find the audience yourself and market to them instead of waiting for them to come to you.
That's a really good bit of advice, because I think that sort of thing might be like lost on a lot of people, especially when it comes to social media, because a lot of people will set up a TikTok page, they'll set up an Instagram page, they'll just post the clips and kind of wait for the audience to kind of come to them. But I don't think a lot of people really kind of do it the other way around, where it's like, okay, who do I want my audience to be? And like with variety, the opportunities are endless,
Yeah.
and like I'm the same boat, like 100 and excuse me, 117 episodes, and the variety is like, kind of, there's so many different, and that's, I think, yeah, I mean, it's something that I know personally I haven't tapped into myself, haven't heard
Mhm.
that. And um but of course, at the same time with that, looking at social media, you have to make it stand out at the same time, because you could kind of post to these groups all you want, but then there's the element of, okay,
Yeah.
why should I tune into? Because listen, everything's all about a hook these days. And now, to be fair, it has been, that's not a new thing. It's just I
Mhm.
more and more, well, I think because people are more and more cynical and don't want to click on everything everything that comes
Yeah.
up anymore. Like, you have to really kind of hook people in, and I feel like there is an art to it. So, like, in terms of, obviously being a producer, and whenever a podcast comes out, you have the finished product in front of you. The only thing they have to do is to upload it. You know, how do you sort of come up with that kind of hook? The one that's like, obviously nothing can guarantee listens or downloads or anything like that, but it kind of puts you at ease in terms of, okay, we've got the content here, we've got the hook to draw people in. Like, how do you sort of get the sort of fine balance there?
When I'm producing a podcast, when I'm the one that's recording it and listening while someone's recording, I always jot down those moments when I'm listening that make me kind of
Mhm.
like stand up or question or like that have that make me react to what they're saying, and I write those down for them. I don't do like social media uh content for people. Like I'm
Yeah.
not the one that's out there doing it. Like I will make clips for people if they want them. um but that's usually what I look for, is like what's making me go, oh wait a minute, what did they just say, or like, stuff like that. And that's the stuff that I'll use.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And like, I know you said you don't do the social media for people, but like, is there a time when there's too little that you can put on social media about an episode, and those are also times where you can put too much out of an episode?
Mm. I think I ran into that when I was doing a daily show.
Mm.
Like I became overwhelmed with, because it was just me. So I became overwhelmed with like, okay, this show is done for today. Now I have to make clips and get it ready and send it, to the guest, all the links. And then I have to get ready for tomorrow's show. And like, where do what can I put out a clip from Monday show on Thursday to back, like it became
Yeah.
so complicated for me because I didn't have any help. Like, and I think if you are a better planner than I am and maybe can schedule things out, I don't necessarily think there's too much. Like I
Hmm.
still get people from a year, 2 years ago that were on my show that are still using clips today.
Yeah.
um, and which is shocking to me. Like it's still out there and they're still thinking about it. So I don't know really if I would have a good answer to that. I feel like not. I feel like that's the point of making content like that, is that there is so much you can use.
Yeah.
It's just, when do you have time to do it, and how often can you put it out? You know?
Hmm. But no, I do like that as an answer, because I think in terms of content, people like, I know I do, but
Yeah.
people overthink in terms of what they want to put out. Because so my structure it's a little bit of a mess right now, but what my structure was I had 2 episodes out that week. It would have been on Sunday, I'm gonna put my episode, a small clip with a little graphic saying episode out now. That was clip one of the episode. Then on Monday, I would have done something just relative, but nothing to do with the
Hmm.
episode, but podcast related. And then the next day, on the Tuesday, would have been a clip from the last episode that's just come out. Wednesday, new episode. Thursday would have been same as Monday. Friday, a clip from that episode, and then Sunday, repeat the cycle. And it was one of those things where I eventually just burnt myself out, because it's one of the
Yeah.
things I would have had to have sat at my computer for a good 2-3 hours after doing all of the editing to find going, because you're sifting through trying to find these clips, because you do remember now, like this was something I learned and I was very happy to learn. You will always remember the highlights of every conversation that you have. You'll remember the pieces that you want to clip, but then you have to go
Hmm.
and find them.
Hmm.
And now for for those who are in that position who might be listening, one thing I found that is an actual game changer for doing this is, if you are lucky enough to remember more or less verbatim what was said, go into your transcript of your episode
Hmm.
and just search
Hmm.
that, find the timestamp, go into your edited video, and then do it that way. Absolute game changer.
Yeah.
but but I digress. Like, before I was doing that, I was finding myself like I was, I would have had so many clips, but then that's one part of it. But then you have to sort of format them, then you have to upload them, and you have to come up with catchy titles. And,
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, and something that I really kind of preach about podcasting is that everybody only ever sees the finished product. Even
Hmm.
with the clips, even with the
Hmm.
clips, the people only ever see that, but they don't really understand what goes into producing a podcast. Like, there
Yeah.
is a lot of that goes into it, like making sure your sound's all right, that your picture's all right, that the editing, the production, generally speaking. And having done this for such a long time, like, What do you do to sort of avoid or overcome burnout as and when it happens?
When I'm hosting a show, if no one's paying me to do the show, my rule is when it becomes too much like work,
Mhm.
and if I know a guest is coming on and I just don't care. If I'm not excited about another interview because I've done 14 today, and and it just is like I just want to get it over with, I know that my season is done. And that usually will like that'll take 9 months in order to do that, right? Like it's not like every couple weeks I'm like, well, this is stupid. Um, and so then I know, okay, the season's done. It's time to like take a break, go live life, go have an experience, miss it, be able to miss it, and then start it again. And that's how I avoid the burnout. When it comes to like daily stuff with clients and what I'm doing every day that people are paying me for, I walk away. I grab my dog, I go outside. I don't bring a phone. I don't like, I just go and I walk through the trails in the woods. I go around the pond, listen to the water, listen to the birds. And you have to like walk away from it, even if
Mhm.
it's for an hour or a day. Like, it's going to be there tomorrow morning. Just go back to it and finish it then. Because it's one of those, for me, it's one of those things like if I start getting frustrated, then it's just snowball effect and nothing's working. Then soon your computer's freezing. Then it's, and I'm like, all right, this is enough. I can't. Like my dog is literally under this desk right now. And so she's ready for one of those walks anytime I want.
That's it. Like, that's how you know it kind of like it hits you at times is when your dog even knows and is ready at
Mhm.
all times to go for a walk. I love that.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I think like burnout is one of those things that's so prevalent in, and it is mentally draining and physically draining. You're
Mhm.
talking all day, you're thinking so much, and you're sitting all day in front of a computer. And
Yep.
like, it does have its long-term effects. And,
Yep.
it's, but there's like something that happened to me in terms of that. And I think I was in the middle of burnout and I was having a really particularly bad day. And like I talk about this a lot because it's something I'll never ever forget. And it was one of those days where I had a recording that day, and it was like nothing to do with the guest, nothing to do with the recording. I was just I can't face this today. And I
Mhm.
realized I forgot to send the recording link. We hadn't been in correspondence for a couple of weeks, and I was like, okay, I'll send out the link in hopes that he's like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't mind admitting this because like I even wrote about it in my book. And I literally was just like, I kind of hope that he would like come back and be like, oh yeah, sorry, something's come up, I've got to reschedule. And I've been like, okay, great. But that never happened. I sent him the link and he was like, great, chat to you soon. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. I guess we're doing this.
Mhm.
And the interview that I had that night will stick with me forever because of how like eye opening it was. Like this
Mhm.
man told me a story and like basically just like basically died twice, with like heart issues. Turned his life around, and it was just honestly, it was one of the most inspiring things ever heard in my life. And it was really one of those things where it's just like, yeah, I I may be burnt out, but there's nothing that's ever gonna stop me wanting to hear
Right.
stories like that. And just really kind of like, do you ever get it when you like know that this is like what you're meant to be doing? When
Mhm.
you just hear something like that and you're thinking, yeah, I'm in the right place. I am so fortunate to be doing this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
I could have an entire episode of my old show of me just crying during those moments because I'll be in an interview like that and my entire body, I'll just get goosebumps everywhere and my eyes will water. And I, for one, just think like, oh my gosh, this is a person I never would have met on the street.
yeah.
Like we get to meet so many amazing people. And the fact that I get to do this, something I've wanted to do my literally my entire life, like I
Yeah.
get to sit here and I get to do this. Yeah, it blows my mind. I get like I'm getting goosebumps now because I like just being able to do this, like not even host, but to be a guest and talk about everything just is a dream come true. So
Yeah.
usually when I get that burnout and I'm like, okay, season's over, it's like a month, maybe 2 months, and I'm like, okay, I would I miss it.
Yeah. And that's the kind of crazy thing that I find personally, because I went about a month there without doing an interview,
Hmm.
just with like moving house and a lot of kind of issues surrounding that. And most times when I've had even like 2 weeks off, I'm kind of like, well, am I going to be off my game here? You know, am I gonna
Hmm.
be able to
Hmm.
really? And then you know, you sit down, you have the, you know, the little couple of minutes that we chit chat before, and then you're like, you're raring to go. You're so ready,
Yeah.
and it's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I've missed this. Like, I
Yes.
really, you know, and it's amazing for me, you know, to go back to the whole introvert point where, you know, you look back at like what life was once upon a time, and you you know, you look back, you know, and you look forward to like today, and you're like, wow, like, I mean, this is not something that, you know, I would have ever foreseen me doing at any age, no matter how much I might have wanted to. Never would have foreseen me doing. And like, I don't really know if people really truly understand the power and the impact that that has. Like,
Hmm.
I know, like, I mean, I'm sure you get this as well. Like, do you ever get people reach out to you and tell you like a kind of like the particular episode stood out, and
Hmm.
like, you know, it really kind of resonated with them, made an impact? Like, what I kind of like love about that is that it's like, that's amazing to hear for a start. So like, anybody's ever reached out to me, thank you. But I can guarantee you it didn't have half the impact that it had on me
Yeah.
as like listening to the story firsthand. It's so, I don't know what it is, but it is such a powerful thing. And I honestly, I think if anybody ever wants to get into podcasting, they certainly should. So like, what you're doing and enabling people to do that is like such a fantastic thing, like, for real.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to learn, and I think it's a great way to teach, and it's a great way to connect with people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think whether you're doing it for personal reasons or even like your business, like, because I know, like I talked about before, you know, businesses, they want to kind of get into that. It's like a new market. There's like an element of relatability, and like I've seen businesses with podcasts, and they will have like their kind of mid-level employees who are like the younger employees, because
Hmm.
there's you know, there's that level of empathy, there's that level of relatability. But you know, and do you ever sort of like get it where whenever you have like a business come to you, and you know, they do their podcast, that the people who, you know, you've kind of trained in that, they go out and like they create their own show because they just enjoyed the process so much that they kind of go out on their own and do like their own personal thing?
I see oftentimes once they start doing podcasts that they start doing their own videos outside
Mm-hmm.
of that. Then they start maybe jumping on a Facebook Live every once in a while, or they start to do kind of some behind the scenes. Like once you get comfortable, then I see them starting to do that more. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because I think it really just kind of shows that it kind of unlocks something in people that they
Hmm.
never might have had before, and like, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, I could gush about it all day.
I know. I know. I started when I started with Becky, who does an HR podcast. I had built her set, and she walked in and she was like, "Oh my god, I feel like I'm Ricky Lake walking into my show on the first day." Like there was just this sense of pride,
Yeah.
and when you're coming in here and you get to see seats like chairs, and you see the backdrop, and you see something that's created for you, there's such a great sense of there's excitement and pride over what you're about to make.
Hmm. Absolutely.
It's
You
so fun.
know, and so then, being a producer, you know, you help other people create their podcast from the ground up. You've created so much yourself from the ground up. What is your personal definition of success?
Oh my gosh. I don't know how much I talk to people about this because I think we're in a space where success sometimes only looks like Joe Rogan. And that's, there are like 500 million podcasts or something. There's a crazy amount of
Yeah.
podcasts out there, but we can only name successful ones on one or maybe two hands, right? Like, and so, what is your definition of success for your podcast? Is it listens? Is it business coming in? Like, when I first started my daily show, I think the first month I had like 7,000 views. And by the end of the first year, I was getting about 100,000 views a month. And I thought 7 was amazing. And then I hit 100 and I was like, but how come it's not 150? Like, then you like that bar for yourself is always being raised. You get a sponsor for your show. Well, how come I don't have 2 sponsors? Or how come they, like you start like messing with your mind of what success is. And it's really important, I think, no matter kind of what you're in, to figure out what success really does. And when you get there, celebrate that. Like, you can make a new goal, but don't discard that goal that you set for yourself that you've reached, because we can just go into the next thing, the next show, the next whatever it is, the next season has to be bigger, better, and we don't get to be proud of ourselves.
I completely agree. Completely agree. I think it's important to celebrate small wins. Whether it be 7,000 in your first month, or whether it be 1,000 in your first year, no matter what it is. I think celebrate the small wins, celebrate the milestones. If you constantly move the goalposts for yourself, you'll never ever feel like you've achieved anything with it, and
No.
you'll have done so much, and you'll have so much to show for it, but you won't personally feel like that. And that's the biggest shame, because nobody is ever going to be able to convince you apart from yourself. You have to really kind of be proud of it, believe in what you're doing, for then other people to really, really see it the same way that you do. People will always enjoy it and like it, but if you really want them to kind of get that same feeling out of it than you do, then you've got to be the driving force behind that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, even that hit home when I started in a basement in Maryland. It was where I did my first show. And when I moved to Texas, there were 2 venues that wanted me to bring my show there. And I chose one, and we went, and it was a comedy club. And 12-year-old me would have been so excited to go to this comedy club and do a show in front of a live studio audience. Like, that was the goal. And then I was doing that, but then I wasn't happy because we weren't selling out. We had an audience, but it wasn't like a full, and my friends were like, what are you talking about? Like, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like, come on. And that's when it clicked of like, oh yeah, like I am doing exactly what I wanted to do. And I have to, like, why are you not happy about that?
Of course. Yeah. Sometimes it is just a matter of just doing it is the sort of biggest thing you can, that you can do. And I think as long as you can do it first and foremost, then it may take time, but the results will definitely come your way after. It's just about persistency and consistency as well. But Richard, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a very, very lovely conversation. I love just talking about podcasting and just, hearing other perspectives. It's just, honestly, it is, it just, it really highlights why I love why I love this, So I would just like to give you the floor just before we wrap up. Where can the listeners find you and make your day richer and everything else that you do?
Yeah, I mean, Richard Wilmore is on all the platforms, but everything kind of lives on makeyourdayricher.com.
Perfect. Lovely stuff. Once again, Richard, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
And there you have it for episode 117 of Behind the Camera. Huge thank you to Richard Wilmore for being today's guest. Be sure to check out Richard and Make Your Day Richer. Links all in the description. As always, thank you to all patrons for your support. You're all truly appreciated. And of course, if you would like to stay connected with Behind the Camera, check out my link tree in the description for all socials and for my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. Thank you for listening, for the support, and for being part of the journey. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.